Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into the ultimate 2026 operational playbook for global manufacturers who need to lock down their supply chains. Look, if you're dealing with cross-border trade today, you know the stakes have literally never been higher. So we're going to unpack exactly how you can take all of today's geopolitical uncertainty and turn it into a rock-solid, fully compliant, competitive advantage.
So here's the game plan for today. We're moving from the big picture of the global supply chain shift straight into Friendshoring 2.0, why the GCC is the ultimate advantage right now. And then we're getting tactical with an implementation playbook, real-world success stories, and a strict 90-day execution sprint.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, the supply chain shift. If you're a global manufacturer staring down 2026, you already know the old offshoring model is basically dead in the water.
We're dealing with a world that's totally fractured by strict sanctions, aggressive carbon reporting like the EU's CBAM, and industrial policies that shift at whiplash speed. You literally cannot afford to get caught in regions with unpredictable rules anymore. Boards and compliance teams are now looking at supply chain geography as a massive risk management variable. You've got to engineer your resilience from the ground up.
Which brings us to Section 2. Enter Friendshoring 2.0. So, what's the actual fix for all this immense regulatory pressure?
Well, it's not just about picking political allies anymore. Friendshoring 2.0 is a totally hybrid discipline. It takes the trust of working with aligned partners and smashes it together with the undeniable perks of geographic proximity, killer infrastructure, and, most importantly, regulatory predictability. It's about building transparent ecosystems that regulators absolutely love.
Think about it like this. The 2020s were all about political alignment. That was Friendshoring 1.0. But 2026? It's strictly about operations. Friendshoring 2.0 shifts the focus to logistics, massive 0% tax holidays, and real-time programmable compliance tech. It is definitely not about dodging rules. It's about proving your compliance at every single step of the game.
Moving on to Section 3, the GCC advantage. Let's look at why the Gulf Cooperation Council has completely transformed from just an energy exporter into a premier manufacturing powerhouse. To really grasp the scale here, consider this. Saudi Arabia alone pulled in an unbelievable $18.4 billion in manufacturing FDI commitments in 2025. Non-oil manufacturing is just exploding across the region, fueled by huge national plans like Saudi Vision 2030 and UAE Centennial 2071. The smart money is already moving, and it's moving fast. And here is the absolute game changer for your bottom line. These designated special economic zones and free zones offer 100% foreign ownership, plus full repatriation rights. You keep complete control over your enterprise and your profits, which is obviously a huge deal when you're setting up a cross-border holding structure. This breakdown gives you the exact lay of the land so you can pinpoint your strategy. Say you're in pharma or precision tech, Bahrain's fast-track licensing gets you up and running incredibly fast. Need logistics for electronics? The UAE free zones offer 0% corporate tax to protect your capital. Heavy imports and exports? Oman's bonded warehousing is perfect for petrochemicals. Or if you're in advanced manufacturing and mining, Saudi Arabia's tax holidays are exactly what you're looking for. You can surgically drop your operations right where they'll thrive the most.
All right, Section 4, the implementation playbook. We know the destination, so let's get into the actual execution with an 8-phase game plan.
The first 4 phases are all about playing defense and mitigating risk. First, you comprehensively map your current supply chain exposure against those strict 2026 regulations. Then, you pick your jurisdiction based on those exact matrix criteria we just talked about. In Phase 3, you wrap that new 100% foreign-owned entity in a totally audit-ready legal structure. Finally, Phase 4, you run enhanced due diligence using AI-driven sanctions pre-screening, basically making sure everything is completely watertight. Then we transition into the physical rollout. Phase 5 is locking down your land and digital inventory systems. Phase 6, liquidity engineering. You use performance-based smart escrow to fund capital expenditures, keeping your source of funds totally transparent. Phase 7 is absolutely critical. You run a small volume pilot production. You have to test those compliance workflows before you hit Phase 8, which is full-scale production and continuous governance. Now listen, none of this works without a rock-solid tech stack. You have to embed programmable compliance tools natively into your operations to keep regulators in the EU and the GCC happy.
We're talking AI for sanctions screening, digital carbon accounting for CBAM, and privacy-preserving data architectures. Platforms like 10to5 Command Center can integrate all these layers for you, giving you real-time optimization and dashboards that are completely ready for an audit. This tech is basically your armor. Let's jump to Section 5, Real-World Success Stories. Because theory is great, but let's look at the companies who have actually pulled this off.
Take this European pharma manufacturer. They were facing major CBAM exposure and concentration risks, so they set up in a Bahrain industrial zone. By using a compliant free zone entity, they slashed their landed costs by 28% while keeping their EU audit trails flawless. And the craziest part? They went from the initial decision to their first commercial batch in just 5 months.
Or how about this? Asian electronics supplier that set up in the UAE's KZAD free zone to serve Europe and Africa. They layered in compliance tech for real-time sanction screening and emissions reporting, and guess what? They dropped their annual compliance overhead by a whopping 65% compared to their old legacy setup. That is massive.
And here's a US-based critical minerals processor in a Saudi SEZ. They show that if you ensure complete traceability of African-sourced materials through a GCC holding structure, you can actually unlock some extremely competitive institutional financing. The banks absolutely loved the transparent, audit-ready structure. It basically de-risked the entire capital injection for them.
All right, Section 6, the 90-day sprint. It's time to speed things up and look at the exact 90-day checklist to make this pivot happen.
Pace is everything here. The first 15 days are purely for rigorous risk mapping and getting your cross-functional team totally aligned. Then, days 16 through 45 are all about picking your optimal zone, getting licenses submitted, and plugging in your AI compliance tech. By day 46, you're locking in physical facilities and running pilot productions to test the waters. And finally, the home stretch. By day 90, you are ramping up volume and getting ready for third-party certification. You're going from zero to fully compliant, scaled production in one single quarter.
As we wrap up this explainer, the key takeaway is this. Moving decisively to the GCC is about turning global geopolitical risk into your own compliant competitive advantage. The folks who delay are going to get crushed by tightening compliance and supply chain disruptions. But if you move now, you capture all those first-mover advantages in speed, cost, and regulatory goodwill. The market always rewards proactive, compliance-first action. So take a hard look at your current setup and ask yourself right now, is your supply chain actually audit-ready for the reality of tomorrow? Take these strategies, find your weak spots, and start engineering your resilience today.